of company culture. I'm Chris Dyer. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I thought, since I'm launching a brand new book at the end of this month on Halloween, The Power of Company Culture, second edition, I would invite all of my favorite people to talk about all the different aspects of company culture. And today I have Mattice, who is an expert in bullying and having a great workplace and all sorts of many different things around that. But I'm gonna let her introduce herself and kind of fill everybody in on who she is and all the cool shit she does. So go ahead.
I do some cool shit. Thanks, Chris. So Catherine Mattice, I'm the founder of Civility Partners. We are a company culture consulting firm, and given my experience in the past internal HR, I was working in a kind of toxic environment and decided I was going to make it my mission to eliminate toxic environments from the earth. So I turn around toxic work environments much of the time. And so, if you're going to be an expert in workplace bullying, you have to be an expert in the opposite. And that's what I do.
I love your mission because, my mission is to try to help companies get better one culture at a time. And really, what's interesting, I think, maybe is a little difference in the work that we do is I find I tend to be working with the B+ students, the A- students, people doing a pretty good job of culture, and they bring me in because they really want to get to that top level. Whereas I would imagine, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, people might be bringing you in and they have this oh no moment of this.
That's exactly
we
right.
have this big problem and we didn't realize we had it, right?
That's right. Yep. What I find the narrative often is that HR has been trying to help the C-suite understand what's happening in the culture. And unfortunately, it takes some sort of catalyst for the C-suite to decide, okay, we need to put resources towards the culture. So.
Right. And do you think this typically happens because maybe the company started to grow and it's become harder to kind of keep tabs on things and they just sort of, I don't know if laziness is the right word, maybe apathy, right? They've got so many other things to do that they just sort of kind of ignored the problem? Or is this maybe like they care and they want to do better, but they hired somebody really toxic and they just didn't realize it? That person can put on the best face ever in the boardroom and then turn around and just be like the worst to their employees. And there's a lack of, they just didn't know, right?
Yeah. So when we're going in because of a toxic culture, what I find is the systems in place, or the systems are not in place to hold people accountable for good behavior. So it's kind of like culture slipped away from them. For example, having a performance management system. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about, that you have an annual review, but all the stuff, the employee brand or employer branding and the recruiting and the way they interview and the way they have coaching conversations, like all of that stuff is missing. And so they haven't been focusing on culture and the systems aren't there to keep the culture good. And so it slips away. When it's a toxic person, I'm going in to coach, which I only coach toxic leaders. I don't coach normal leaders. That's the case, that this person has been creating a lot of drama and trauma for the people below them who report to them, but they're doing really well when they're talking to leaders. And also, even if the leaders are aware of that behavior, because HR has been telling them, for example, these people are crazy performers. And so the organization sees them as just super valuable and chooses to ignore the behavior in the interest of results without recognizing that while they're getting results, they're creating a lot of other problems. So they're not as awesome as they might seem.
And we see this in sales all the time that some of those top performers are also the top toxic people. Just creating all these bad behaviors. And I guess there's people that you might interact with at work that can be considered a bully or toxic or whatever. And that's one interaction. I think the most difficult one is like if it's your boss, if it's someone who has power and control over you, right? There's the bad employee that you can just be like, ugh. But when somebody like keeps jobs or keeps things or keeps you from moving ahead or getting promotions or raises or all this stuff, or even just recognition in the company, I mean, that's like a whole nother level. right?
That's right. Yeah. So when you report to somebody who engages in bullying, they certainly have a lot of say over your career, right? Because they can withhold bonuses or benefits, or even using performance conversations as a way to document, poor performance in their team, rather than giving the kind of conversation that they should be having. They're yelling. I coached a woman who would do this a lot when she'd talk, and everyone had chalked it up to she's just passionate. And that HR director I'm just sick of people saying she's passionate. You can't, we're not writing this off. You can't do that. And so, it's scary if you have a manager, one who leans over the desk or who shames you in front of your team members. These are the types of behaviors I see. And I'll say, these people engage in that behavior because they can. The organization not only allows it, but promotes it. Like, hey, you're getting results, so we're going to give you more raises, more seniority, more, bigger teams. And so they're being rewarded for the way they're getting results. And so a lot of times when I'm coaching these people, they honestly had no idea about the impact they were having. They know people think they're an ass, but they don't recognize that it's not just that you're an ass, it's that people literally go home and cry over the way you treat them every day. So,
you and I had, we did a thing together on your side a few months back, or maybe it was a year ago, I don't know, it was a little bit ago. And it was around mastering tough conversations. And we talked about strategies and different things that we can do to deal with difficult people. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I always want to make sure that I make the distinction about here is there are strategies in dealing with difficult people. We have difficult people in our lives, and they might be difficult because our own stories and our own issues and our own biases or whatever getting in the way. It could be their behaviors and things, but, and this is the big but, that's not the same as being bullied. Right? Being difficult and just not getting along with someone and needing a strategy is not the same as a continued, constant somebody trying to keep you down and just you feel like you're the nail at the end of a hammer just coming down on you every day.
Yep. Bullying is abuse. And of course, we would never say that if you're married to an abuser that they're just difficult and you should work through it. It is abuse, and it happens at work. And it's very different. And so if somebody's looking for kind of a clear distinction, a difficult person doesn't chip away at your self-esteem the way that a bullying behavior does. And it's something that you still feel like maybe you have a little control over, where if I try these strategies, this person can change. And you can't. There's lots of strategies for a variety of difficult behaviors, but this is abuse, where no matter the strategy, you're probably still going to end up being bullied. There isn't a real clear way to get out from underneath being bullied. And so unfortunately, a lot of times my advice is you have to leave and go somewhere where the organization cares about your self-esteem and values you.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the best advice, right? Is to take all that energy, allow that company to continue to pay your paycheck while you go find your next great job, and you get picky about who your next boss is going to be, and do all of that. Now, that being said, if you can't do that, if that doesn't work, I mean, some people are in jobs where they can't leave, right? They would lose seniority, they would lose pay, think about teachers and police officers, and there's people who inside of there's sort of the system set up to keep them where they are.
Right.
And so you need to report it, or you need to, do things to, I guess let's talk about what does that look like? If someone feels like they can't leave, what should they do?
Yeah. And I'll just add to your list, older workforce, they probably often feel like I've got 5 years left in my working life and nobody's going to hire me right now. So where am I going to go? I'm kind of stuck here, right? Living out those last 5 years. So that's a piece of it. So what I would say is making sure that you help set the HR person up for success when they have the conversation with the leaders. So this is hard advice to give and hard advice to follow, but I think it's important. If you go to your HR person and you're in there bawling and talking about how hurt you are and all of that, unfortunately, that's not a business case for HR to take to the leaders. And the leaders are going to think things like, well, maybe you just need to have thicker skin and stuff. And I hate that that's the deal, but that's the deal. If you can go to HR, just like you would with harassment complaint, where you've got some data and some perhaps emails and things you can bring with you to really prove that this person is causing damage. And so keep a journal, keep write something, don't keep this on your computer. But for example, if you're in a meeting and people are spending time talking about the bullying behavior from the boss instead of working, document that. And then it's like, look, there's a lot of wasted time on this topic of this person and the way that they behave, so that you can prove all the ways that they're damaging the organization. And that's, unfortunately, for us as individuals, a better way to go about it. And it's an emotional place to be, and it's very scary to report something to HR, whether it's bullying or harassment. So that's kind of my advice, is go prepared to really make a case. And then also using the phrase hostile work environment. I hate to say it, but that's a way to get some attention as well, because that sounds the alarms and the organization has to really look at it. Hostile work environment is only applied to harassment, unlawful behavior. But what happens a lot of times is when I coach people who are bullying, it's on the heels of an investigation where somebody use the phrase hostile work environment, an investigation was done, and the investigator will say, well, it's not technically unlawful harassment behaviors, but it's a problem and you should probably fix it. And then I get called in to coach.
Yeah. And, all this is like, it's really, really tough. And I think it puts this person who didn't ask for this to happen to them in this position of having to do all of this work and create all this documentation and to be totally prepared. And the onus is essentially on them, right?
Yep.
And one of the things that I have suggested to people is to say, hey, make sure that you take your story, take what you think is happening, and talk to some people, not, and this is my opinion, not your close friends, not your family who will always be on your side, but someone who you trust to tell it to you straight, right, in your life outside of the organization, and say, this is what I'm going through. This is what I think. What do you think? To really make sure that what you think is bullying, right? Or is bad behavior, or whatever.
Yep.
That's always kind of first. I don't know how you feel about this, but if you have someone in the organization you do trust, then if you feel like you're really at that point, hey, are you seeing it the same way I'm seeing it, right? Because I have seen those situations where somebody's overly sensitive on how they're interpreting everything, and it's not really bullying as well. And so, I guess you just want to be sure, you want to be really clear, what you're presenting to be articulate and true and believable. And so when you go to HR, when you do ask for help, it's easy for them to help, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. See a therapist, or, I would say, I guess piggybacking on that is when you talk to people at work about it, which I'm sure you do and will, be careful about like the victim mentality, because that will suck you into a place you'll find it very difficult to get out of. And so it's not about like, let's go have a bitch fest about this person. It's got to be just keeping that business workplace mindset on, of just, let's talk about the facts. What are we experiencing? Can we take this to get to HR together as a group? And obviously there's power in numbers. If 5 of you go to HR, that's very different than 1 of you. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, even 2, even 2.
More than 1, just more than 1 of you.
More than 1. I mean, even like 2 has like more than a doubling effect. And 3. I mean, I certainly have seen this with friends who, they've had issue with the boss or whatever, and then when they finally are sick and tired of it, a group of them then went to the boss's boss, and man, did things change pretty quickly. Right. But when just one of them went, well, you're just this complainer and you're whatever, and
that's the thing. You got to be really aware of coming across as a complainer, and that's where my advice is coming from, of like, put your business hat on. This is the workplace. And so you got to use work speak, not, you really got to not come across as like a whiner or complainer, or you don't have tough skin. Unfortunately, that's the label you'll get if you do come across that way. So actually my book Back Off, which I'm in the process of writing a version 2. So that'll be out at some point. I'm kind of in the middle of it. It's a 10-year-old book, so it's old, but there is a really great worksheet in there that's several pages long in terms of like all the ways to prepare. For example, you know, what the different scenarios where if HR says, we don't care, get out of my office, you know, what's your next step from there? And just really getting mentally prepared for this. It's a big step. So I would recommend Back Off. It's old. Maybe don't read all of the book. Use the worksheet in there.
Well, that's great advice. So, you know, certainly there's the preparation. There is the perception checking we talked about. There's the maybe get help from your friends, or get, you know, go in as a group, go in as a, you know, cohesive unit as opposed to being one person. Is there anything we've missed, I guess, sort of in this, you know, best practices if you feel like you're being bullied that you might want to do?
No, I think that's it. You know, really bringing facts and keeping a journal. I guess, yes, I will actually add one other thing. So I think you'll appreciate this, Chris, because we're both in the world of positive work environments. So I did a research article a while back where I wanted to understand essentially how come people like me, you know, I was bullied. I came out of graduate school and started a business, and look at me now. You know, it was a blessing because now I have a great career and I do what I love. And what's the difference between me and somebody who does go down a different path and can't get out of it and develops PTSD, and you know, it destroys their life? And there's a lot of research on positive psychology and resilience and so on. So I was kind of looking at it through that lens. And so I put out a call for people who had been targeted and bullying. And I was looking specifically for people who felt like they had a success story, like mine, you know. And what was interesting was I fully expected these stories of like, I told HR and the world, you know, the world changed and all this stuff. But what happened, what I got, these stories are like, I'm successful because I decided to be empowered. And so really what these stories boiled down to is they all shared their story of being bullying, and it's going this and it's going this. And then there's a moment in time where it's like, F this, I'm not doing this anymore. And the trajectory of the story totally changes. And so that making that decision of like, I'm going to take my power back. And it was very different for everyone in their stories. I was fired. So I didn't, you know, my decision moment was after I was fired and I was driving home from work. Like, I'm not going to do this anymore. No way. And I'm going to grad school and I'm going to do this. I'm going to have a business. Another woman said that she basically just went to her boss after the, you know, last straw and like dropped this big bundle of keys to all the facilities on his desk, all dramatic, you know, like, I quit. And that felt really great for her. So, you know, their success, these people felt successful because they had decided, I'm not doing this anymore. One woman actually decided, I'm going to stay at this organization and I'm going to be the Martin Luther King of this place. And I am going to see justice. But she decided to stay, not, you know, it was a very different mode of being at work. Like, I'm here to make change. So anyway.
I'm here to make change and I'm going to make this right. And
yeah,
I guess everyone has to decide what's the right thing for them.
Right.
It sounds like in each of those situations, what they did was took a positive turn to something that they were going to do specifically, which I guess turns them into away from being the victim, right? And into controlling their own situation and their own environment.
Exactly.
You know, it's not fair. Life's not fair, but you know, that has had to happen to them to begin with. But I guess what we're saying here is you need to do something about it. And there's a lot of different ways you can choose to do that. There's not one thing you should do. But doing nothing and continuing to be in that situation is not good for you, not good for your family, and it's not going to end well.
Right, exactly. So, and then to all the employers out there listening, it's your responsibility to make an environment where people thrive. And there's a domino effect to the way people treated at work. If they go home every day complaining to their spouse or their partner or whoever lives there about how awful they're treated at work, that's negative energy being brought into the home, and the kids pick up on that and take that out into the world. Versus if you come home, I love my job, I love I love my boss, and I feel valued, then you're bringing that positive energy home and out, and then whoever lives with you is bringing that out into the world. So we all have an ethical responsibility, I think, to make sure people feel good at work.
And even if bosses, and I don't think this is true for most bosses, but if the company and the bosses just didn't care about that, and all they cared about was profit and making, and increasing sales, well, guess what? I will tell you that in my companies and in every company I've ever worked with, that the amount of their sales trajectory, their profit trajectory, always coincided with how employees felt about their company. Yeah. And there is no way that that's not a coincidence. When they feel better about work, they work hard, they want things to happen, right? They go home, and in the community, they're talking about the company in a positive way. Yep. All of that brings goodwill to the company. So you should care about people, but even if you don't care about people and all you care about
there's a return on investment.
Right. If you're Scrooge McDuck sitting at home, there is a return of investment for you caring about this stuff. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a shame we have to say that even, but yeah, that's the thing. Some people are just focused on profit.
Yeah. Well, I want to really, it looks like I put my picture up backwards. That's awesome. Oh, well.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
It looks good on your end? Okay.
Yeah.
It's backwards to me, but if it looks good to you, then we're good. Okay.
I'm reading it correctly. Yes.
I want to thank you so much for being a part of this. I always enjoy having conversations with you, whether it's online or it's you and I back in the green room at a conference or whatever. We always have a good time.
Yeah, we seem to cross paths a lot, so always a pleasure.
Yeah, so hopefully everyone will remember to check out my book on October 31st, or you can pre-order it now, The Power of Company Culture, 2nd edition. Lots of cool, it's double the size, and we added case studies with NASA, Neiman Marcus, and Gary Vee's company, VaynerMedia. So there's lots of new cool stuff, and I rewrote all of the other crap stuff that didn't belong there. It's all gone now. So
yeah, so you know why I said don't read my book if it's 10 years old. Well, I'm excited to read it, Chris. Hopefully I get a signed copy, and I know you're doing a lot of great work, and looking forward to reading it.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for being here, and thank you again, Catherine, for being here with me. And go out and make your workplace a better place to be.